And now, without a word of warning from the ghost, they stood upon a bleak and desert moor, where monstrous masses of rude stone were cast about, though it were the burial place of giants, and the waterspread itself was of it listed, or would have done so, but for the first that held it prisoner, and nothing grew but moss and furze, and coarse rank grass. Down in the west, the sun, setting ahead, left a streak of fiery red, which glared upon the desolation for an instant, like a sullen eye, and flowering lower yet, was lost in the thick gloom of darkest night. "What place is this?" asked Scrooge. "A place where miners live, who live beyond the bowels of the earth," returned the spirit. "But they know me, see?" A light shone from the window of a hut, and swiftly they advanced towards it, passing through the wall of mud and stone. They found a cheerful company assembled around a glowing fire, an old man and a woman, with their children and their children's children, and another generation beyond that, all decked out gaily in their holiday attire. The old man, in a voice that seldom rose above the howling of the wind upon the barren waste, was singing them a Christmas song. It had been a very old song when he was a boy, and from time to time they all joined in the chorus. So surely as they raised their voices, the old man got quite both and loud, and so surely as they stopped, his vigor sank again. The spirit did not tarry here, but bade Scrooge hold his robe, and passing above the moor, sped, whether not to see, to see. To Scrooge's honor looking back, he saw the last of the land, a frightful range of rocks behind them, and his ears are deafened by the thundering of water as it roared and roared, and raged among the dreadful caverns it had worn, and fiercely tried to undermine the earth. But upon the dismal reef of sunken rocks, some league or so from the shore, on which the waters coughed and dashed, the wild year through, there stood a solitary lighthouse. Great heaps of seaweed clung to its base, and storm-birds, born of the wind, one might suppose, as seaweed of the water, rose and fell about it, like the waves they skimmed. But even here, two men who watched the light had made a fire that threw the loophole in the thick stone wall shut out a ray of brightness on the awful sea. Joining the hanging on hands over the rough table at which they sat. They wished each other Merry Christmas in a can of grog, and one of them, the elder too, with his face all damaged and scared with hard weather, as the figurehead of an old ship might be, struck up a sturdy song that was like a gale in itself. Again the ghost sped on above the black and heaving sea, on until, being far away, as he told Scrooge, from any shore. They lighted on the ship. They stood beside the helmsman at the wheel, the lookout in the bow, the officers who held the watch, Jack, ghastly figures and their several stations, but every man among them hummed the Christmas tune, or had a Christmas throat, or spoke below his breath to his companion of some bygone Christmas day, with homeward hopes belong to it. And every man on board, working or sleeping, good or bad, had held a kinder word for another on that day than on any day in the year, and had shared, to some extent, in his festivities, and had remembered those he cared for at a distance, and had known that they delighted for to remember him. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while listening to the moaning of the wind, and thinking about a solemn thing it was to move on through the lonely darkness over an unknown abyss, whose depths were so gross as profound as death. It was a great surprise to Scrooge, while thus engaged to who a hearty laugh. It was a much greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize it as his own nephew's and to find himself in the bright, dry, gleaming room, with the spirit standing smiling by his side, and looking at the same nephew with approving affability. "Ha ha!" laughed Scrooge's nephew. "Ha ha ha! If you should happen, by any unlikely chance, to know a man more versed in a laugh than Scrooge's nephew, all I can say is, I should like to know him too, introducing him to me, and I will cultivate his acquaintance. It is a fair, even-handed, noble adjustment of things, that while there is infection and disease and sorrow, there is nothing in the world so irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humor. When Scrooge's nephew laughed in this way, holding his sides, rolling his head, and twisted his face into the most extravagant contortions. Scrooge's niece, by marriage, laughed as heartily as he, and their assembled friends, being not a bit behindhand, roared out lustily, "Ha ha! Ha 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 ha! You said that Christmas was a humbug, as I live," cried Scrooge's nephew. "He believed it too." "More shame for him, Fred," said Scrooge's niece, indignantly. "That's those women. They never do anything by halves. They're always in earnest." She was very pretty, exceedingly pretty, with a dimpled, surprised-looking, capital face, a ripe little mouth that seemed made to be kissed, and no doubt it was, all kinds of good little dots about her chin that melted into one another when she laughed, and the sunniest pair of eyes you ever saw any little creature's head. Altogether she was what you would have called provoking. You know that satisfactorily too. Perfectly satisfactorily. "He is a comical old fellow," said Scrooge's nephew. "That's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his officers carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him." "I'm sure he is very rich, Fred," hinted Scrooge's niece. "At least, you always tell me so." "What of that, my dear?" said Scrooge's nephew. "His wealth is of no use to him. He don't do any good with it. He don't make himself comfortable with it. He hasn't the satisfaction of thinking, 'Ha ha, that he is ever going to benefit us with it.'" "I have no patience with him," observed Scrooge's niece. Scrooge's niece's sisters and all the other ladies expressed the same opinion. "Oh, I have," said Scrooge's nephew. "I'm sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. He suffers by his own irreverence. Himself always. He takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? He don't lose much of a dinner." "Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner," interrupted Scrooge's niece. "Everybody else said the same, and they must be allowed to have been competent judges, because they had just had dinner and, with the dessert upon the table, were clustered round the fire by lamplight." "Well, I'm very glad to hear it," said Scrooge's nephew, "because I haven't a great faith in these young housekeepers. What do you say, Topper?" Tupper had clearly got his eye upon one of Scrooge's niece's sisters, who, he answered that a bachelor was a wretched outcast, who had no right to express an opinion on the subject. Poorest, Scrooge's niece's sister, the plump one with the lace tucker, not the one with the roses, blushed. "Do go on, Fred," said Scrooge's niece, clapping her hands. "He never finishes what he begins to say. He is such a ridiculous fellow." Scrooge's nephew revelled in another laugh, and as it was impossible to keep the infection off, though the plump sister tried hard to do it with aromatic vinegar, his example was unanimously followed. "I was only going to say," said Scrooge's nephew, "that the consequence of his taking a dislike to us and not making merry with us is, as I think, that he loses some pleasant moments which could do him no harm. I'm sure he loses pleasant enough companions that he can find in his warm thoughts, either in his moodily old office or his dusty chambers. I mean to give him the same chance every year, whether he likes it or not, for I pity him. He may really at Christmas till he dies, but he can't help thinking better of it. I defy him. If he finds me going there in good temper year after year, and saying, 'Uncle Scrooge, how are you?' If it only puts him in the vein to leave his port like £50, that's something. And I think I shook him yesterday." It was their turn to laugh now at the notion of his shaking Scrooge, but being certainly good-natured, and not much caring what they laughed at, so that they laughed at any rate, he encouraged them in their merriment, and passed the bottle joyously. After tea, they had some music, for they were a musical family and knew what they were about when they sang a glee or a catch. I can assure you, especially Topper, who could grow away in bass like a good one, and never saw the large veins in his forehead, or get rid in the face of it. Scrooge's niece played well upon the harp, and played among other tunes a simple little air, a mere nothing. You might learn to whistle it in 2 minutes, which had been familiar to the child who fetched Scrooge from the boarding school, as he had been reminded by the ghost of Christmas past. when that strain of music sounded, all the things that Ghost had shown him came upon his mind. He softened more and more, and thought that if he could have listened to it often years ago, he might have cultivated the kindnesses of life through his own happiness with his own hands, without resorting to the sinister spirit that buried Jacob Marley.